This is Rob Tebbutt from Behind the Gloves. I'm delighted to be joined by Eddie Hearn. How are you doing, Eddie?
Very well, thank you. Very well.
Good.
Sorry I missed you at the Whyte-Browne press conference yesterday.
And the AJ Parker press conference?
No.
Yes.
Oh, was it? That's your fault. I didn't see you on that one. You didn't approach me. So.
Well, I started to think you don't like me very much.
Nah, well...
Is that neither here nor there?
No, we'll see. We'll see.
So we're here in Sheffield at the Rise Again press conference. Kell Brook returns at £154 to face Sergey Rebchenko. How pleased are you that Kell Brook has returned to the ring?
Very pleased. And I was walking around Sheffield earlier and I was it's bringing back memories of fight week, and unfortunately it was the same week where we had the Manchester bombings, and it was a tough week for the country. Obviously it was a tough week for Kell Brook, but it was a great event. We had Spence Brook was a brilliant fight. We had 27,000 people in at Bramall Lane. When's that going to happen again? Maybe never. George Groves beat Chudnov that night. Dave Allen made a mess of it against Leroy Thomas. So it's good to be back, and it's taken Kell a while to really get over that Errol Spence defeat, because losing to Golovkin was one thing, but losing to Spence for your world title in your hometown hit him hard, and it's taken him a while to realise what he wants, and that is to be back in Sheffield fighting in front of his fans in big fights, and ultimately moving on to the mega fights.
And you talk about that, was there ever any consideration of bringing him back somewhere else to avoid that sort of the
not
ghosts?
Really. No, not really, because you've got to overcome it, and I think Kell Brook's got a lot of experience. He's not going to come back and turn up in Sheffield and say, oh, hang on, I feel a bit dizzy because I'm remembering the Errol Spence fight. He's a fighter. So one thing I will say is I think this is a tough fight, and I think the opponent's actually being overlooked in this fight because not everybody's heard of Sergey Rebchenko. He's very tough, he can hit hard, he's game, he wants to win badly, and if Kell Brook is not the same fighter, and if he doesn't have the desire, he won't beat Rebchenko on March 3rd. So a part of me is looking forward to seeing what's left in the Kell Brook tank. He's training very hard. Obviously the news of Amir Khan sort of just invigorated him a little bit, and I'm expecting a great performance from him.
With Kell going up to £154, Sergey Rebchenko is the kind of pressure fighter that maybe at £147, Kell Brook may have come into some problems later on in the fight.
Probably the most intelligent thing you've ever said. And you're quite right. The problem with Kell at 147 was, as we found out in the Errol Spence fight, is if you keep pushing him back and you keep wearing him down, his tank's going to empty because of the way he makes the weight. So you'd hope that his tank doesn't empty at £154, and I believe it won't either. So we'll see. But again, why I like the Rebchenko fight is you get to know everything you need to know about Kell Brook in that fight.
I'm actually full of interesting, intelligent things to say. You have to speak to me more
regularly.
You should
do it more. Yeah, it's true.
With Kell at £154, this is something that we've spoken about in the past with the whole risk-reward type thing. £154, deep division, a lot of talents, no real marquee names.
No, you can't just say, well, I'm going to just strip myself down to make 147 and not be the fighter that I could be. Do you know what I mean? We're beyond that now. And he stayed at welterweight for the Spence fight, where he should have maybe moved to 154, but that's in the past now. So now we'll see what he's got at 154. If the Khan fight gets made, does he get made at 147? Be tough. Does he get made at catchweight? Yes, please. Or 154? Yes, please. But again, we've got to see what Amir does on April 21st, and it's going to be really interesting to watch both of their performances. Hopefully they can both get big wins, and we can continue to build it.
You signed Amir last week was the press conference. How's it been different in the last week as opposed to, say, the last 2 or 3 years when you were very much, at loggerheads or not on the same team?
We've always got on, socially, but obviously through trying to make the Kell Brook fight, etc., there's always been that animosity. When we sat down and sort of overcome that, it's very obvious that the right move for both guys was to work together. Kell was surprised initially, but then sort of realised this is actually great because it gives me a chance to fight Amir, takes down some of the barriers. Still a long way to go, splits and weights, and they've both got to win. But yes, there's definitely a much better chance that fight can get made now than previously.
If the Amir Khan fight isn't made, supposing the end of Khan's 3-fight deal comes, that fight hasn't been made, what are the plans for each fighter? Do they depend?
I think Kell, how long does Kell have left? 3, 5 fights, something like that. So really, we need to see that fight this year. You know, I think, and I don't want to be in a position where, when we all look back and their careers are done, that everyone says we never made the Brook Hearn fight. You know, that was the fight that everyone wanted to see. So I think we owe it to the British fight fans to make the fight, but also they both make a fortune. So you know, it's not just doing it out of charity for fight fans. So I just feel like that's the fight, but they both got to win and hopefully look good doing it.
Now Kell's now at 154, his last fight against Errol Spence was at 147. We've obviously spoken about his issues at making the weight. Was making the weight made more difficult by fighting Gennady Golovkin at 160 pounds, and do you regret putting him in that fight?
No, definitely not. And you know, I don't put fighters in fights, you know, subject to public belief. It's not like I just turn up and say, you're fighting him, and you ain't got a say in it. It's not like the UFC, do you know what I mean? So ultimately, the Gennady Golovkin fight came about. We were looking for that super fight and that big money fight. You know, Kell had been through injuries, he'd been stop-start. We needed that fight. We were about to make the Vargas fight, the Jesse Vargas fight. We had to pay him so much money that Kell was going to make, I don't know, a fifth of what he'd make in the Golovkin fight. And it's a very tough fight again. The Golovkin fight came up, Eubank didn't want to sign the contract. I spoke to Kell's trainer, I spoke to Kell's dad, I spoke to Kell at length. I said, this is the fight, this is the money, do you want it? And the answer is, yeah, absolutely. You know, it's great that he could step up in weight. Everyone knew it was a shot to nothing. You know, and actually, what damage did that fight do to him? All right, I know he had the eye injury, but he wasn't really beat up in that fight other than the eye injury. You know, what it actually did was it allowed him to earn a fortune in the Errol Spence fight on pay-per-view, because his stock rose in the Gennady Golovkin defeat. So, you know, like I said, contrary to what people think, we don't make the fights, we provide the options for fighters and their teams. And collectively, we all made the decision that that was a fight we were going to step up and take.
You talk about the injury that he sustained against Golovkin. Obviously, the other eye went against Errol Spence. Kell said something about, you know, he heard the doctor's voice through his head about you're potentially going blind. Is there any concern that, on the back of 2 of those injuries, a similar situation could arise in his career?
Not really, because after the Golovkin injury, you know, that eye was absolutely fine in the Spence fight, and that was a brutal fight. So now, you know, the specialist says both eyes are stronger than ever. So you'd like to think, this is boxing though, injuries can happen, and you know, we feel that eye is not a problem, and it wasn't a problem in the Errol Spence fight. Unfortunately, the other eye went in the Errol Spence fight. So he hasn't had the best of luck, but he's in a good place, and you know, I think he's going to go and make a statement against Rabchenko.
Now let's just touch on the rest of the card. Obviously, we've got Gamal Yafai against Gavin McDonald. Great fight, really well-matched fight. Yeah. Just tell us a little bit about that.
It's a fight I've wanted to make for a while, really, and I want to make these inter-stable fights because, 1, they're easier to make, and 2, the fans want to see them. So Gamal Yafai against Gavin McDonald, great example of that. Gavin McDonald fought for the world title, sort of wants another shot at it, but Gamal wants to be in that level, that world title level. Perfect fight. You know, you talk about like Rocky Fielding and Jamie Cox, you talk about Crawler against Campbell, you know, these are the kind of fights that I want to make. So hopefully it's a sign of things to come. Really good fight, and a real 50-50 fight. Dave Allen, you know, gets a chance at redemption against Lemroy Thomas. Kid Galahad back on a card, good title fight between Lee Appleyard and Latif Shafiq, so it's a very, very strong card on March 3rd.
Just touching on Dave Allen, I think that's the first time I've ever been at a press conference and seen somebody, it was almost like, you know, in the films when the lights go down and it's just those 2 people. Was that planned?
No, not at all. I wasn't going to say anything like it, but I like talking to Dave, and you know, does he deserve another shot at Lemroy Thomas? Maybe not, but I like to give it to him because I think he can beat him, and I think it'll be a special atmosphere if he does. And I'd like him to live his life with that title and that win. So maybe I'm just a bit of a softie, but on the flip side, as I said to him, this is your last chance. Make no bones about it. If you don't do the business here, it's over. So he needs that pressure, and he needs to fight with that desperation, if you like, to strip it and rip it off Lemroy Thomas.
You had some harsh words for him after the Lemroy Thomas fight initially. What does he have to do to ensure that he doesn't make the same mistakes again?
He just got carried away. Listen, he's a very popular guy on social media, and what he was trying to do was keep everybody happy. So on the day of the fight, he doesn't drink or anything like that, but he was round the pubs, seeing fans, traipsing all over Sheffield, meeting people. You don't do that in preparation for a major title fight. And he learned the lesson. Like he said, he was knackered in the ring. I'm not surprised. He's been around Sheffield all day. He should be sleeping all day. But he paid the price, and he's a little bit naive sometimes, but he's got a good heart, and he's a good person, and he can fight. But he must win on March the 3rd.
Kid Galahad returns to a Matchroom show. Obviously, the featherweight division is absolutely booming worldwide. What are your plans for him moving forward?
Try and get him in the mix for all those big domestic fights. I mean, you know, I think he's a big star in Sheffield, and he can really fight. So let's see him back, see if he can make a statement. And you know, I think it's wide open at the moment for people to go out and have big world fights. I mean, you've seen Quigg just get the shot against Valdez now. And of course, domestically, there's some major fights for him.
You spoke earlier about making these interstable fights. Obviously, Kid Galahad competes in the division of featherweight, where you've got Carl Frampton, you've got Lee Selby and Josh Warrington supposedly about to face off. If he wins that fight and becomes mandatory, say, for the IBF, then how easy or difficult is it to make a fight with him and somebody like Selby, or the winner of Warrington?
Well, if he's a mandatory, very easy, because they've got no choice. Difficult. But you know, I won't worry about that yet. Let's get ourselves there first, and we'll worry about it after. You know, Scott Quigg could win the WBO world title in a couple of weeks' time, and there's a bit of a logjam to fight Lee Selby. But you know, Kid Galahad needs to get in there and get in the mix and try and get a mandatory position.
This is something I've spoken to you about in the past. The clashes of fight dates and the seemingly the acrimony between yourself and Frank Warren. We've seen it already this year with Frampton Donaire clashing with Amir Khan. As a fight fan, I don't like to see it because I like to watch all the fights, and I like to be, you know, is that something that we can expect more of in 2018, or is there going to be a thaw-in?
Well, you saw one yesterday. Josh Taylor is fighting on the same night as Kell Brook. But people don't talk about that because it's not Eddie Hearn doing it. So it's just something that happens. Did Barry McGuigan put Josh Taylor on because Kell Brook was on? No, he would have rather found another date. But it was the only Saturday available at the Hydro. So it's tough, you know, and sometimes, unfortunately, you're going to get clashes. And that's just how it is. I'd rather we weren't clashing, but we are, and now we are. We've got to put on the biggest show possible and try and make sure that as many people watch it as we can.
Okay, and just moving away from this card, because as we said, I didn't actually catch a word of you at the AJ Parker press conference.
You've got to hurry up as well.
I know, no problem, Eddie.
You've done 20 minutes.
You've done 11 minutes.
Is that all?
It
always seems like a day with you.
Pulling teeth. Yeah,
okay,
great. AJ Parker finally over the line, press conference. David Higgins, not quite the train wreck that he said that he potentially was going to bring to the table. Just your thoughts on AJ Parker?
It's a brilliant fight. Two fearless, undefeated, big punching, fast heavyweight world champions. Doesn't get much bigger. I think it's a dangerous fight for both. As far as David Higgins, I've got a good relationship with David Higgins. He's a bit quirky. He's a good businessman. He's done a good job. I just wanted him to say it to AJ's face, that was all. And I'm sure we'll get plenty of fun out of him out of the build-up.
Something I said to him in the post press conference interview, it seemed like you were trying to wind him up a little bit, maybe just light the fire a little bit.
Yeah, I wanted him to say the same things that he's been saying, you know, on social media and in other interviews, but he couldn't quite pull the trigger. But like I said, I think you'll get plenty more from David Higgins in the build-up to this one.
Do you think the fact that he didn't is telling?
No, I think that, were they overwhelmed by the situation? I don't know. I mean, look, it's a big. You saw how many media's there is, and the cameras are going off. It's not like a normal press conference. So
it's really hard to get interviews.
Yeah, exactly. And it's very difficult to keep your cool when you first experience it. So I think when they'll be back, you get more fun.
And yesterday we saw Dillian Whyte and Lucas Brown exchange pleasantries. That's also another one that's
X-rated, a great fight, a really good heavyweight fight. And I feel that outside of the championship fights, that's probably one of the best fights that can be made in the division. 50-50 fight, March 24th for the O2, it's going to be a good one.
And David Price, is he going to fight Alexander Povetkin?
Maybe, we're talking about it at the moment. I'm trying to get that one over the line.
Okay, well, Eddie Hearn, I just sense that you're aching to get away from this interview.
Got to get a train.
No problem. Thanks very much for speaking to Behind the Gloves. Look forward to catching up with you soon.
Cheers.
Hi fans, it's Michelle Joy Phelps, and if you haven't already subscribed to my YouTube channel, make sure you go ahead and do so by clicking right here.